He externed with the American Center for Law and Justice, everybody knows Jay Sekulow, and has advised businesses with integrity and foresight. David served as an administrator and national coordinator for Christians for Donald Trump, overseeing digital campaigns that reached millions. He also founded Trails of Life USA, a value-driven alternative to traditional scouting, active in all 50 states. A seasoned lecturer in creation science apologetics, David excels at communicating complex ideas to diverse audiences. As the Virginia Beach John Birch Society chapter leader, he has expanded membership to include candidates, business owners, attorneys, and influencers dedicated to constitutional principles and American sovereignty. Dividing his time between Virginia Beach and Bucks County, Pennsylvania, David is a father of 5, a grandfather of 8. Today, can you imagine his Christmas list? Just get gift cards. Okay, today he discusses the risk of a convention of states, emphasizing the importance of preserving the Constitution for future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Servin. Thank you.
Dressed for the cowboy party already.
I know. You guys get to make that announcement. We'll be doing announcements.
All right, so, am I on?
You aren't. You just gotta have to shove it in your face a little bit.
Okay, so as Waverly said, I run the Virginia Beach chapter of the John Birch Society. And the John Birch Society, okay, so we have influencers from different organizations that come to our meeting, from VAMFA and Black Road Regiment, and different leaders from different organizations come to our meeting. And each of those organizations, including your own, has their areas that they focus on, okay? So the John Birch Society focuses on 7 areas, and that's what we talk about. And that includes defeating the conspiracy, the New World Order you might say, getting out of the United Nations, ending the Fed, supporting and obeying the Constitution, rejecting Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, restoring election integrity, and rebuilding America's cultural base. And each one of those things has subtopics within it, okay? So those are the things that we talk about. For example, city elders, I know they talk about abortion, and they work on that. It's not that that's not important to us, but that's what they do, and so we do this. Technically, we're a non-political organization, no particular religion, but dare say that since we follow the Constitution, that kind of usually tracks in a certain direction. So the first thing is another thing I should say about the John Birch Society, just to give you maybe a real quick idea where it comes from. The John Birch Society was MAGA before Donald Trump was MAGA. Okay, so essentially what Donald Trump did was he adopted the policies of the John Birch Society. His father was involved in the John Birch Society. He just adopted the policies, and so we're really, that if you want to know where we're coming from, that's basically where we're coming from. So in that respect, the things that we do overlap significantly with the Tea Party, because all those things I mentioned are things that the Tea Party also works on. So who knows about the Constitutional Convention? Does anybody know a little bit about it? Okay. So the short term here we use is the CONCON, okay, the Constitutional Convention. And the groups that are kind of supporting it, they like to use the phrase Convention of the States, okay, because that just makes it sound like you're getting together for a convention, you know, like going to a tree care expo or something, okay? But the Constitutional Convention actually has constitutional parameters that define it, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. And so, as you may have guessed, I'm here talking against the Constitutional Convention. I don't necessarily expect everybody in this room to have that feeling to share with me, at least not at this time, but at least I'm going to show you why we would be against the Constitutional Convention, and you can make up your own mind. So the main phrase we would say is we don't need to change the Constitution, we just need to follow it.
Empower.
What's that?
Empower.
Empower. I mean, the Constitution's great, the problem is we're not following it. I mean, for example, we talk about a balanced budget amendment. That's one of the things that they want to have a Constitutional Convention for, is that we want to balance the budget. Congress isn't passing a balanced budget amendment, okay? Well, the problem is that we really don't need a balanced budget amendment. We just need the federal government to stay out of all the things that they're not supposed to be involved in according to the 10th Amendment. Okay, so if the federal government got out of all the things they're not supposed to be involved in, we eliminate 90% of the budget. Okay, in the beginning of our country, we had 300 federal government employees and 5 government agencies. The Department of War, the Department of, I forget what they all were, but there's 5. Okay, that's all. And how many agencies and sub-agencies do we have now? 1 million plus employees in the federal government. So if the federal government has expanded, and if they just did what they were constitutionally supposed to, we wouldn't need a balanced budget amendment.
No, but that's not
Okay.
realistic anymore.
That's not realistic anymore. No.
I mean, as far as doing what they're supposed to do, and we would have a balanced budget, it's not realistic. That's not gonna happen in our lifetime. We're
Well-
kidding ourselves with that. That's why the Convention for the States is there, or trying to be there.
Right,
Okay.
okay, we'll talk about, you can ask questions when he's done, let him finish the presentation.
I guess a quick answer would be, if the people in government don't pay attention and don't obey the Constitution with the amendments that it already has, if we add 2 or 3 more amendments, there's no reason to believe that they would then all of a sudden say that now we're going to pay attention to the Constitution. It's already in the Constitution, and they're not paying attention to it. Okay? So now I just want to move over to exactly what it is, exactly what a Constitutional Convention is. It's built on Article 5 of the Constitution, okay? And this is, in totality, Article 5. This is the entire Article 5 of the Constitution right there. So I'm going to read through it, and I'm going to break it down a little bit. It starts out, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress, provided that, then it gives 2 exceptions. So I guess the founding fathers, they must have been lawyers, write such a long sentence, okay? But anyway,
They were lawyers.
so just to note that it says that these are the things that can be done with only 2 exceptions. One of them had to do with slavery, that for 20 years they still had to allow the slave trade, and the other one had to do with states having equal representation in the Senate. But other than that, Congress can call for Congress can propose amendments, or can call for a convention of the states to propose amendments. Okay? Now, if we break it down a little bit, there we go. Okay. So, there we go. Okay, so this is the first part, the first step. Okay, so all that we're going to be an expert on this in a minute. Okay, the Congress, when 2/3 of both houses deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution. That's what we're used to. Congress, between the House of Representatives and the Senate, they agree on an amendment, and ultimately, through another step we'll see here in a minute, they pass the amendment. Okay, so basically, the Congress can do that. Or, on the applications of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. So this first part has to do with how amendments are proposed. Either Congress itself can propose amendments, or if the states, 2/3 of the states, basically petition Congress and say, we want to have a convention to do it, then Congress we'll have to call a convention, because 2/3 of the states have asked for it. And the convention team can then propose amendments. So amendments can be proposed either by Congress or by a convention of the states. Okay, now, it doesn't say what the convention of the states is or how it works, but that's one of the two ways. We'll get more into that in a minute. So next, once they propose the amendment, then it has to be adopted. Okay, and there's two ways that the amendment can be adopted. The first way is when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states. Okay, so let's say Congress proposes an amendment, and it passes both houses. Now it has to get ratified. And to get it ratified, to be an amendment to the Constitution, 3/4 of the states in the United States have to approve it. Okay, that's one way. The other way is Congress can bypass the states, and they can go right to the people, and they can say, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. So in other words, that really reduces the state's power. It really increases the federal government's power. There's only one time, by the way, when they've ever used this other method. That was for repealing prohibition. Okay? Because there were people in Congress that felt that the states, the people that were in power in the states, were more for, what do you call it, dry. They didn't want to have alcohol. So they said instead of having the legislatures of each state try to approve it, they were just going to have the people vote on it. Okay? So the people basically approved it by referendum, basically. Okay? And the people voted to repeal prohibition. So other than that, every other amendment to the Constitution has been passed by ratifying with the legislatures of each state. Okay? The key here is, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress. So we don't have a say which one is used. Okay? Congress can decide on a case-by-case basis how they want to move with this. Okay? So you can imagine that, that you have a convention of the states, we'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, and it comes up with something we don't like, okay? And then Congress says, well, we're not going to let the states vote on this. We're going to let all the people vote on it, okay? So now you have big states like California, New York, they're going to vote probably in a way that we're not having it, okay? So if they let the people vote, all right? So that would be dangerous to us. And then finally, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution. So if you do this and then you do that, then it becomes part of the Constitution. Okay? So when we talk about a convention of the states or constitutional convention, what we're talking about is this part right here. Okay? Where 2/3 of the states say, we'd like to have a convention, and they vote on that, they petition Congress, and Congress calls a convention of the states. Okay, now, a couple things. That's the whole Article 5. There's no more to it. There's no small print. Okay? So nowhere in there is there a constitutional authority for a limited convention. Okay? So when Congress has the power to make amendments, they're not limited. The only thing they're limited by is these two things, the slavery and the equal representation in the Senate. So when Congress can propose any amendment they want, okay, that's one way to do it. The other way is you could have a convention of the states, which would be the alternative to Congress. So if the convention of states does it, then the people that are in the convention of states, they have the same power to propose anything they want to, just like Congress. It's an or, either or. They can do the same thing. Okay? So now people can try to interpret it a different way, but it's up to interpretation then. Okay? What you're looking at is the Constitution itself doesn't actually say that you're going to limit a convention of the states to one topic, like having a balanced budget amendment. The Constitution itself doesn't say that. So if we were going to try to limit it to a balanced budget amendment referendum in a constitution of the states, then somebody would have to make that determination that that's how it's going to work. Somebody would have to make the rules. Who's going to make the rules?
We don't know.
Well, usually when you have a convention, the people that make the rules are the people that are delegates to the convention. At the beginning of the convention, they set the rules for the convention. okay? And so we have a history of that with our original 1787 convention, okay, when we formed the Constitution, which we'll talk about a little bit more too. Okay? Not only that, there's no guidance here. Show me, look there, and tell me where there's guidance on how delegates would be selected.
They don't have any.
Okay? So who's going to be selected? Give me an answer. Does anybody in this room honestly believe that you'll be selected to be a delegate for Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay?
They pick who they want.
So, I mean, purple-haired freaks maybe? I don't know. Who's going to be selected? Okay, Hillary Clinton?
The parties.
Okay.
They really will.
There's no guidance on who could qualify as a delegate.
Right.
There's no guidance on how many delegates each state could send. Okay, so the question is, will every state get the same number of delegates so they're all represented equally? Or will it be based on population? Or will it be like the Electoral College, that it'll be based on some type of a formula like the Electoral College? Somebody's going to figure that out. Somebody's going to design that. Okay. I mean, my own feeling is that if this starts to kick off and there actually was going to be a constitutional convention, a lot of people would probably be watching Rachel Maddow on MSNBC.
I don't waste my time.
And she'd be talking all about how the delegates should be selected, and it would be an echo chamber and all those stations and CNN, and they'd all be talking about it and influencing the opinion of the people, and who knows how it could end up, okay? With social media talking about it and everything, okay? So there's no provision for stopping a runaway convention. So if all of a sudden the convention says we actually want to become part of the New World Order, there's nothing in the Constitution actually says that there's a limit. I mean, maybe the Supreme Court would step in and have something to say about it, but there's nothing here in Article 5 that limits a runaway convention. There's no provision for how rules would be established. There's no provision for how rules would be enforced. There's no role provided for the people, for us to play in the process. There's no power provided for the people, us, to stop a convention once it gets started. There's no description of the ratification conventions that Congress could choose to call. There's no rules governing the ratification conventions that Congress could choose to call. That's the ratifications down here, okay? There's no means provided for the people to challenge Congress's choice of the method of ratification. There's no means provided for the states to challenge Congress's choice of the method of ratification, and there's no test provided for a qualifying application submitted by state. In other words, there's no description other than the fact that it's called a convention for proposing amendments. There's nothing in here that says how it's supposed to happen or anything, okay? There's nothing. So basically, once the number of states, 34 states, 2/3 of the states, petition Congress, the legislatures agree, and they petition Congress for a convention of the states. Now we have a convention of the states, and now everybody starts trying to figure out what that's supposed to look like, okay? And that's the first problem that we basically run into. So, right now, where do we stand? The Convention of the States Action, that's the group that's basically coordinating and pushing the current Convention of the States program right now. There's 19 states that have passed what's called multi-issue resolutions. Okay? So it's not just one thing for a balanced budget amendment. We'll talk about what they are, but there's a here they are. Multi-issue resolutions for a convention focused on fiscal restraints, term limits, and limiting federal power and jurisdiction. Okay? So those are things that we kind of are for, okay? But it's not one thing. Like if it was a balanced budget amendment, one thing, it might be narrow, but this like is broad. So limiting federal power, well, you could do that by giving federal power to the World Court or giving it to the states. All these things limit federal power to have anything to say about whether or not we can have guns. Okay, so there's all kinds of ways that this could be contorted around. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, okay, there's no guarantee that once it's appointed, that they'd have to stick with these things. Okay, so in fact, imagine two people agreeing to a meeting. It's going to be wine, candlelight, and a movie. That's all they're agreeing to, okay? And they get together, those two people, they get to make the rules so it could go anywhere, okay? And that's what we're talking about. When the people that are delegates say, well, we're going to get together for this, this, and this. But once they're together, then they can talk about anything they want. And they can assert their pet projects however they want. Okay, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. And there's nothing stopping, again, Rachel Maddow from saying, oh, look what they did wrong, look what they did right, and having the whole country being involved in this Constitutional Convention. So, let's look a little bit further at the timeline of the Constitutional Convention, of modern Convention of States movement. Starting, I'm sorry if I'm in your way, but so starting in 2010 to 2012, that's when the Tea Party movement surged after opposition to the Affordable Care Act. You were talking about that before the meeting, okay? So basically, the Tea Party came on the scene, and first discussions among conservative constitutional lawyers started about, well, what about that Article 5 thing? Like, Congress isn't giving us what we want, so maybe we can use that Article 5 method to work around Congress, okay? Now, I will say that back in 2010, that was only 15 years ago, but I mean, the country was a different place 15 years ago, okay? I mean, 15 years ago, you might have trusted the general population maybe to go along with things in the right direction. I don't know if we would trust the general population to go along with things in the right direction today, just 15 short years, okay? But anyways, in 2012, we had a Supreme Court ruling that upholds most of Obamacare. Okay, you may remember that. And so when that happened, that sparked continuing interest in finding a fix outside of Congress. Congress voted for Obamacare, basically, and conservatives are saying, well, if Congress is going to do that, maybe we can use this Article 5 thing to get around Congress. Okay? Then in 2013, we had what's called a spark year. This was the year that really started off the Convention of the States. Now, I mean, there had been applications for the Convention of the States in the 1700s, the 1800s, the 1900s for things like eliminating slavery. At one point in time, they had multiple states, several of them said that they had applied for Convention of the States, saying that they wanted to have the senators be elected by the people instead of appointed by the states. Okay? And they didn't get enough people together to have that constitutional convention. But the people in Congress saw the movement, and they just passed an amendment that said that senators aren't going to be appointed by state legislatures. Now they're going to be voted for by the people. So now what we have in the federal government is we have the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they're basically the same thing. They both come into power the same way. They're both voted by the people. And the Senate was supposed to be 2 votes per state, and the state interest was supposed to be, the state would choose who goes, and if they didn't follow up with what the state wanted, the state would bring them back. Okay? Well, so anyways, Mark Levin, okay, which, listen, all these people that we're going to talk about that are involved with the Convention of States, they're conservatives, okay? Which means that there's lots of things that we agree with them on, okay? There are, in this particular topic, the Convention of States is something that divides people on the conservative side, okay? And so you can see why, because the way I've already presented it, it sounds like a great idea. Let's go in and fix what Congress isn't doing right, okay? So Mark Levin, up until that time, the one that had gotten closest to having a constitutional convention was a single issue topic, which was a balanced budget amendment. I think they were up to 28 states. They only needed 34. 28 states said they wanted to have a constitutional convention for a balanced budget amendment, for one topic, okay? Mark Levin came along and wrote a book, bestseller. He wanted to have 11 amendments to the Constitution. So this was usually up until the time when Mark Levin wrote that book, people that wanted to do a constitutional convention, they would narrow it down to one topic to keep it very, very tight. But Mark Levin came in and said, no, let's take 11 different topics. And he wrote a book, and it sparked everything. Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and all the people on talk radio, conservative talk radio, started talking about it. Rush Limbaugh promoted it, okay? Glenn Beck promoted it, Now, I mean, I love Rush Limbaugh, okay, and we all probably love Rush Limbaugh, but, I mean, listen, I mean, we can all make mistakes,
We don't have to agree with everything.
okay? I mean, okay, for example, take Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck was anti-Trump from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? He made a mistake, so now he's pro-Trump, okay? Glenn Beck was also for a constitutional convention, but now he's flipped. He's against the Constitutional Convention. And what was his reason why he flipped? He said, I flipped because the country's morals have decayed to such a point that if we had a constitutional convention, we couldn't trust the people in the Constitutional
Amen to
Convention
that.
to give us a country.
That's what it says.
Okay?
I don't know
That's
who
what
would
he
be
said.
part of that convention.
Right? So basically, there'll be other people we'll talk about in a minute, but you know, when I talk about these people supporting the Constitutional Convention, I'm not against them, but it's just that I think that they're misguided in this one area. Okay? So, anyways, that started it. Michael Farris, you may know Michael Farris. He ran for governor of Virginia, and he was the founder of the Homeschool Legal Defense Fund, and he was the head of some other. He started Patrick Henry College and did some other things. But Michael Farris, he was totally anti-Trump. So I had certain relationships with Michael Farris. I mean, when Donald Trump was running for president, he said on his Facebook page, I, Michael Farris, I am the man who talks to the United Nations and tells them what they need to do, not Donald Trump. If Donald Trump runs for president, I, Michael Farris, will put somebody in as an independent candidate to take that man down. I do not allow that man to be president of the United States. You can't be a Christian and vote for Donald Trump.
Guess
And he wasn't the only one saying it, okay? All right? So Michael Farris, he does great things. He defended homeschool Legal Defense Fund. He started Patrick Henry College, one of the conservative colleges. Okay, he's involved with just involved with Alliance Defending Freedom. He was the president of that. Did great things. But I mean, he's a little bit arrogant in this one perspective, that he thinks he knows the proper way forward. And it's in the beginning he was wrong. He was now he's going to the White House and shaking hands with Donald Trump and doing everything for Donald Trump. Okay, okay. I have a little bit of a hard time sometimes forgiving people that were so much like that in the beginning. Okay, but the reason why I say all this is that we like these people. These people do great things in other areas, but it's possible for people to be mistaken in one particular area. Okay. So then in 2014, we had the first legislative victories. So these men that started the convention of the states, started to go around to congresses in the different states making presentations, and they got Georgia, Alaska, and Florida to pass their resolution for the multi-topics that they wanted. Okay? And they began to structure grassroots training, social media ramps up. In 2015, Alabama joins. In 2016, Tennessee, Indiana, and Oklahoma, and Louisiana passed the resolution, and Rush Limbaugh discusses Mark Levin's ideas multiple times during that election season. Grassroots emphasis on term limits and fiscal restraints resonates with the voters, of course, okay? But the issue isn't, let's rewrite the Constitution so we can do that. The issue is, let's hold our leaders responsible to follow the Constitution so we can do that, because it's already in the Constitution. In 2017, breakthrough year, 4 states, okay? They host their first National Legislative Strategy Summit. In 2018, the focus shifts to swing conservative states, and they adopt a domino effect lobbying approach. So they win in one state, and then immediately after they won in one state, they would go to the next state and try to piggyback off that win. Okay? Even more states in 2019. In 2020, the pandemic slowed things down. They switched over to Zoom lobbying. And in 2021 and 22, they renewed their surge. They got a few more states. They're up to 19 states. In 23 and 24, no new states. But 8 states do pass the resolution in one of their 2 houses, but not in the second house. Okay, so those states don't count. Conservative influencers, okay? Conservative influencers like us on Facebook and X and different things. We're grabbing onto this thing, like let's have this convention in the state and put Congress in its place, okay? But we're not necessarily fully cognizant of the ramifications of that, okay? The current status is still at 19 states. They continue lobbying, and the public discourse, what we're talking about, increasingly tied to concerns about the national debt and federal agency overreach. So the people that are for the Convention of the States, people that are against it, as I'm representing, we agree on that. We have concerns about national debt and federal agency overreach. We disagree on the way to fix it. We're not going to have a convention with a bunch of whoever is picked out to figure out our future path. We already have the Constitution. What we have to do is hold our elected representatives accountable, which Donald Trump is starting to do. Okay, so hopefully, hopefully he's the point of the spear to start to get some of this accountability done.
He took away some of the power just recently of the agencies being able to make decisions that they had no business making.
And the fourth branch of government, the agencies. That's another whole story. Let's look about the founding of the Convention of States action. These were the three people, Mark Meckler. Mark Meckler was a co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots. Okay? And Michael Farris, Eric O'Keefe. Okay? So these people basically looked at it at the time. It seemed like, well, hey, I mean, if we have a constitutional convention, if the congressmen are like chicken to like pass some things, like a balanced budget amendment, well, we can have a constitutional convention. We can pass that, okay? But now we have a constitutional convention. Will they be trying to make sure that every person in America has the rights to kill their child? What will they talk about? What will they do now, okay? These are the leaders of the Constitutional Convention, okay? And they have... they emphasize that their grassroots involvement with thousands of volunteers, but this core group of people they're in total control of the Convention of States movement. A very small cadre of people are basically leading the entire thing, okay? And there's money. So how's the funding look? They claim that they're getting small donations, okay? But basically they're getting donations from foundations like the Mercer Foundation, the Koch Network, other major donors and foundations. Even Michael Farris was linked to Ziklag. Anybody know about Ziklag? They're a secretive group of wealthy conservative Christians that require members to have a net worth of at least $25 million. Okay? So there's big money involved. And by the way, so if you're an attorney, you can make money by charging an hourly rate. But if you work for like a public policy organization, you know, you're not charging a client for an hourly rate for your services. Instead, what you're doing is you're making a topic that's really a hot button topic, and you're getting everybody in America to donate to the organization, and then you're drawing a salary based on all those donations. Okay? So it's not like there's not a money motivation here. And so, for example, the Koch Network. Okay? The Koch Network, I mean, we're kind of feel ourselves lucky as conservatives that the Koch Network gives money to us. They give money to a lot of our different things. I mean, Americans for Prosperity, a great group here in Virginia Beach.
Oh, no, they're not. They're horrible.
Well, they're funded by the
They're
Koch
funded by
brothers.
Coke.
Yes.
Okay. All right. But in any case, I'm saying they give money, but they're libertarian when it comes to economic matters. But when it comes to social matters, they're liberal. Okay, so they're pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, you know, pro all that stuff, okay? But they do support us. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag. So the same people, the one organization that I was involved with was ready to take a big, large sum of money from the Koch brothers. They were ready to take a large sum of money from Procter & Gamble, okay? It's like, and I said, no, you can't do it. Well, why? It's a lot of money. I said, because they have some control over what we do. We can't, no, we don't have to do it. They say, yeah, you don't understand. When they give you that kind of money, they buy control and influence, okay? So anyway, the point is that what's the Koch brothers' interest in the Convention of the States? They're building pipelines, oil pipelines from Canada down into the United States. They have business interests, and it's in their best interest to have a Convention of the States. Maybe to have, they're for like free open borders, to have workers come where they need them, for example. So there's other motivations that they have for standing behind the Convention of the States other than purely theological, if you want to say, reasons for doing it, like we would have, okay? Next thing, these are the states, the 19 states that have already passed the Convention of States resolution, okay? And the next states down here, these are the ones that have passed it in one chamber of the two chambers in the states. And these are the states that are actively considering the resolution in 2025. Okay? So the total states needed is 34. The states that have fully passed is 19. The states that have passed in one chamber is 8. And the states actively considering the resolution now, 21. Okay? And so I'm going to talk to you more about what would happen if we had a constitutional convention, but there is an alternative. Okay? And the alternative is not to use Article 5, but to use Article 6 of the Constitution. Okay, so Article 6 has what's known as the Supremacy Clause, where the Constitution shall be the supreme law of the land. Okay, and every state and federal employee, policeman, Sunday school teacher, I don't know about Sunday school teachers, but they all basically have to swear allegiance to the Constitution. So if the federal government were to pass something that was unconstitutional, okay, the states can just nullify that by saying we're not going to do that in this state, okay? And that's really the preferred method is if they say that we're going to take all your guns away, and that's unconstitutional, and we've had this, we maybe heard about some of the sheriffs that say they're not going to enforce that, okay? Well, you don't have to enforce that if it's unconstitutional. I guess they'd have to take it up to the Supreme Court and try to stop you from doing it then. But, okay, I'm just going to switch back over to this to keep this in the background here while we talk about a few other things. And let's see here. Why?
For 5 minutes to 8 and 2 PS.
Oh, okay. Does that mean how much?
Well, no,
We
you're
started late,
fine,
though.
but
We did start.
I was gonna say that, let me finish, jeez.
How much
We
time?
started late, so you can go late, but I just wanted to keep you aware of the time.
All right, so what is at issue is federalism, okay? Federalism, it's really kind of the reverse of what it sounds like. Federalism makes it sound like you're for federal government, but federalism means that you basically buy into the concept of federalism, which is that there's power for the federal government, and everything that the federal government doesn't have assigned in its purview is then handled by the states.
18.
Okay, so what is one of the issues? Everybody here like proud to be an American?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the issue. Because when you identify with who you are, what your citizenship is, I'm American. Okay, but the way it was intended to be was you're supposed to say I'm a Virginian.
Right.
Okay? Because originally the states, the small U, United States of America, okay, originally it was 13 countries.
Right.
But the word for countries back then was states, like the state of Germany, the state of France, okay? So it was 13 countries that formed a union for common defense and common purposes, okay? But they were supposed to each have they were all supposed to compete. Whichever state could have the lowest taxes and the best programs, that would be the states that would prosper the most, okay? And competition between the states was supposed to bring up the standard for everybody. But now, even we, conservatives, even we consider ourselves to be Americans and not Virginians. So we're basically conceding that all the power lies in the federal government. Okay, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be proud to be Americans, but that's how things have developed. That even we are thinking that the federal government is where all the power is. We did say who would be the delegates. Would they share the ideology of the Founding Fathers? Would they be Republican, Democrat, Communist, elitist,
Everybody.
special interest, money people? Who would be involved? Potential delegates: Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom, Bill Gates. Who would be the delegates? Who would be lining up as soon as this got known that there was enough people to have a convention of states? What forces would be then stepping in to try to make sure that they can control who the delegates were? Would it be us Christians that spend our time going to church and working and minding our own business and trying not to interfere with other people?
It'd be the party bosses.
You know?
That's what I
I think would they know the difference between a democracy and a republic?
That'd be a nice start. Senator Goldwater said, I think it would be very foolhardy. It would be a tragic mistake to hold a constitutional convention for this one purpose. I say it would be foolhardy and dangerous because if we held a constitutional convention, every group in this country, majority, minority, middle of the road, left, right, up, down, is going to get its 2 bits in, and we are going to wind up with the Constitution that will be so different from the one we have lived under for 200 years that I doubt the Republic could continue. So who would influence? Mainstream media, social media, Hollywood, sports figures, foundations, outside actors from representing other countries, political parties, activists, lobbyists. Who's going to get in on this? And what are they going to be pushing for? Who would keep it on track? Well, we have the historical 1787 convention, where the states all sent representatives under the Articles of Confederation to amend it, and the standard was all 13 had unanimously approved that. They were sent, but once they got together, the delegates said, okay, well now we're the delegates, we're writing a new constitution, and we're changing it that it just has to be 9 out of 13 states have to approve it. So they made the new standard. Okay, so the delegates could literally like rewrite the Constitution and make an entirely new standard for how it gets approved. Now, the Convention of the States has had mock simulated conventions where they claim it worked out well. Okay, but like in those mock simulated conventions, they had highly Democrat states and with 5 Republicans being represented from those states in their mock convention. So it was totally slanted. It wasn't representative of what really happened. Now they talk about prior state conventions. So there were probably like, not for the whole country, but there's when certain states get together and they talk about things, they say that never gets out, that's never gone out of control. But that's not on the same realm as something that's constitutional, where you have an option to actually change the Constitution. Okay? How about hijacking for partisan agendas? After all, that's what our side would be doing, right? Wouldn't we be trying to hijack it to get all the things we want in the Constitution? Don't you think the other side would be trying to hijack it too? Public sentiment. Get this. In the 1940s and early 50s, the movement for world federation under the California Plan convinced 24 state legislatures to call on Congress for a constitutional convention to lead the United States into a world government. Okay? So this is 24 states actually did that in the World War II era. Okay? How about delegates from strict gun law states could undermine the Second Amendment in the name of safety and happiness? Who would determine what constitutes the happiness of Americans? In today's political climate, rife with corruption and cronyism, it would be manipulated by wealthy and influential individuals. With scarcity of true constitutionalists in state leadership, there's a big risk regarding who would be chosen to amend the Constitution. Not Article 5. Article 5 isn't going to keep it on track. Article 5 is not going to keep it on track. There's no constitutional authority for a limited convention, and Article 5 permits amendments either through Congress or a convention, but is silent on the scope. So where could it go? Runaway convention. Most conventional con proponents assure state legislatures that a con can be limited to proposing only like one amendment, like the balanced budget amendment. But Mark Levin, as I told you, he proposed 11 amendments. And this group, the Constitution of the States, they consider an unspecified number of amendments that would do anything involved with improving fiscal restraints on the federal government, limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limiting the terms of office for its officials. We'll talk about term limits in a minute. But they've even tried combining, like everybody who's ever asked for a constitutional convention since the 1700s and then rescinded it or whatever, they've tried to combine all of them to say that they have 2/3 majority. So they're doing everything they can to have, and by the way, now the liberals want to have a constitutional convention. Okay? So you know, everybody's going to have a constitutional convention, everybody's going to want to have a constitutional convention for what they want to have it for. What would take ratifications? Well, you could either have the states ratify with their legislatures, or the people could ratify. Well, what have the states done? The states ratified the 16th Amendment, giving us income tax. The states ratified the 17th Amendment, giving us the senators, okay? And so can you trust the states to ratify? How about letting the people vote on it? I mean, you want to have all the people in the country vote on whether we should have abortion or not? You want to risk that? Which way that would go? Okay, so, I mean, if you do this, it's almost better to have it in Congress, where it's almost impossible to get 2/3 of the people in both houses to agree to something. It's almost better to have it impossible to put a new amendment in than to have it easy to put a new amendment in. At least with no new amendments, we have the Constitution, which already kind of has everything covered. Okay? So, balanced budget. I told you the federal government lacks constitutional authority for its spending. They just followed the Constitution, they get rid of about 90% of the budget. Okay? The Constitution already limits the power of the federal government, we just need to follow it. Term limits. Now here's one, probably most of you in the room would say, yeah, we want term limits. But think about it, okay? Think about it, okay? Term limits, first of all, limit the voters' choices. It creates a lame duck Congress all the time because none of the people can run again. So now they can do whatever they want without having to be responsive to the people.
It also makes the bureaucracy that much more powerful up there at the federal level.
And
Because they know how to run things, and the new guys come in and just go, what do we do?
And by the way, you're just replacing old radicals with new radicals. You're replacing Nancy Pelosi with AOC. Okay? The problem, and you're also eliminating a pool of experience. Okay? The Constitution's provision for frequent elections is effectively serves as a term limit. But the people need to be educated and centered morally and elect good representatives. So if you're going to keep electing Nancy Pelosi into office, what does it do if we say, well, she can't run, and then they just elect AOC into office instead? Okay? I mean, we got to get the people to vote right, and that's kind of our job, is to educate everybody and to try to get things centered morally in this country. Adding new amendments won't ensure adherence to the Constitution if the current constitutional provisions are ignored. I'm almost done here.
No, you're good, you're good.
Okay, the Constitution already defines federal limits, negating the need for a convention if those limits are observed. Financial interest, not constitutionally necessary, necessity drives the push for constitutional convention by the Convention of the States. The 10th Amendment is the solution to restrain the federal government and stop unpure constitutional acts, making a convention proposed amendments unnecessary. Okay? I have some handouts out here. Okay, there's actually 4 types of handouts, 3 of them about the Constitutional Convention, and 1 about what the John Birch Society does in Virginia Beach. Okay, so there should be 30, which is enough for everybody in this room. So please come up afterwards and grab 1 of each. There's a little Slim Jim here that has some questions on it. I just want to read some of those questions. Okay. All right. If the government doesn't follow the Constitution now, why would it follow a revised one? Is the Constitution the problem, or is it the officials who violate their constitutional oath? Will a con change corrupt officials? Why don't more legislators stop federal overreach into their state by simply not participating in unconstitutional programs? Okay? I mean, the government has everybody convinced that they got to go along. Like, you know, the Department of Education, well, they're going to give you federal funding unless you do it a certain way. You don't have to accept the federal funding. Do it your own way, okay? But why don't more states just say we're not going to do what the federal government wants? The federal government has no authority under the Constitution to intercede in education, okay? If we're electing very few constitutionalists now, how likely would it be to have constitutionalists sent to a constitutional convention from our state?
Very little.
After decades claiming a constitutional convention would be limited to 1 amendment, why are some advocates now saying the whole Constitution can be revised? Advocates claim the ratification process will stop any bad amendment since it requires 3/4 of the states. So why didn't that stop the previous bad amendments from being ratified? Did you know Congress could bypass state legislatures and use state conventions for ratification? We talked about that. Considering the vicious political climate, you know Donald Trump saying that? Like, vicious. I love how it emphasizes. Okay. Considering the vicious China, okay, political climate, is this the time to have a new constitutional convention? So, what to do? Well, we have to educate people, okay? And I know the Tea Party educates people. I know the John Birch Society, we're spending 1/7 of our time educating people on this particular topic. We have to educate the voters. We have to influence our elected officials. I don't know if the Tea Party has it, but at John Birch we have these scorecards. For everybody in Congress, you can print out their scorecard. It'll show you what they voted on. It'll give them a score. You'd be surprised, the Republicans that get a score like 30. all the Democrats are almost zero, okay? All right, but I mean, some Republicans, Virginia, are like 100.
What's Jen Kagan's
Jen
score?
Kagan, she's at 33%, I think.
No, she's in the
But
30s.
as far as voting on constitutional values, okay? So I would say about Jen Kagan's is that there tends to not be a spending bill that she doesn't vote for, okay? Now, in her defense, they say, well, she's in a mixed district, and if she doesn't, like, compromise, then she won't get reelected, okay? But, I mean, you know, things she votes for, it's great. We're helping the military, we're helping these people, we're helping those people, but those things aren't necessarily in the Constitution. Go ahead.
Here in the
Is that a
second,
question or a statement?
here in the second district, we have switched from Democrat to Republican many times since William Whitehurst was in.
Okay?
All right.
I guess that's pretty much my presentation. Now, is there any questions?
All right, so I just want to set some ground rules. A, you can ask any question you want. I have no problem with questions. No long-winded statements. If you want to make a statement to him, when we go on break, you can statement all day long. But these are legitimate questions. There has to be a question mark at the end. So you call on who you want to answer questions for.
Well, Mike had his hand up first. Mike?
Okay, what's the status of the Equal Rights Amendment?
Don't know.
That's the one about women. You don't know that?
No, I don't know what the status is.
Anybody know the status of the Equal Rights Amendment?
Nope. Oh, you're a loner.
It's not been passed yet by enough states. Virginia, under Northam, was going full on to get that ERA passed.
I thought Biden passed it. Did Biden say he passed it himself?
No, he can't pass it.
All right, so we don't know
He
that.
said a lot of things and he doesn't know what he said.
Trina?
Okay, say one of the states decided to join the convention in 2010, whatever. Who in that state made the vote to do it, and is it forever now a yes, and
Okay.
how does it get back changed
So
to a no?
some of the states have passed these things with sunset dates, saying that they're both houses passed it and it's good for 7 years or something, okay? Then there's the whole question of, suppose they pass it and they say, well, we're for a balanced budget amendment, but it doesn't include the exact same wording as the Constitution, as the Convention of States is doing, okay? Now, somebody, the Congress probably, has to decide, well, are they close enough together that they're basically the same thing? Can we count them both towards the same, Convention of States, okay? And then there's states that have rescinded, but the people that are for Convention of States say it doesn't matter because they did it originally, you can't rescind it, okay? So there's a whole, again, it doesn't say how it's supposed to be done. So everybody interprets it totally their way, okay? Question? What's your name?
Paul.
Paul.
So you say Article 5, well, you follow the Constitution, but Article 5 is in the Constitution.
Yes.
Right.
It's in-
Okay, it's in the Constitution. The other thing is, do you feel that there's a certain urgency now in our national debt? Do you see any urgency? Like, do you feel that there's catastrophe ahead in some period of time?
Yeah, I mean, well, we get rid of the Federal Reserve, fractional banking,
Yeah.
Okay,
inflation,
these
all
are
that
all
stuff.
things, but has anything worked? People talked about this stuff, and they talked about following the Constitution, and I completely agree with you. But what's been done?
Well,
Nothing's happening.
okay, maybe a little bit side story, but like, so when the Russians had the Bolshevik Revolution, right? And then they became communist, the USSR. It took 3 generations of pain and agony until Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And the people in Russia said, well, why the heck are we doing this stuff that our parents and grandparents put in place? That's terrible. Okay? So it took agony of 3 generations to change it. I hope we don't have to go through that in the United States. But I mean, you're saying, where would it go? Well, if we don't stop it, if we don't get the government to pay attention to the Constitution, we may end up with a government that will take 3 generations of agony for people to wake up and finally do something.
How effective have we been so far? And what makes you think that we're not gonna, that continuing this route
Yeah.
is the way to go?
Well, my personal opinion is that the Republican and Democrat parties have traditionally been two flip sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Okay? And when Donald Trump was elected, it's the first time we had a third-party candidate actually run for president and win, even though he did it in the Republican Party. So this is a positive, it's a very positive thing. I mean, sometimes, okay, so I ran the Christians for Donald Trump campaign. We had up to 75 million unique post reaches a week, okay, during the 2016 election. And I mean, my national media coordinator would call, like, okay, what the Billy Bush thing on the bus. He'd call and say, now Donald Trump's fried, right? And my refrain was always, give it 2 weeks. Just give it 2 weeks. He'd always call me panicked. Go, Donald Trump did this, and the media said, give it 2 weeks. Okay. I think Donald Trump is way ahead of what the media is. Okay. I think he would like to eliminate the Federal Reserve. I think he would like to get us out of NATO. I think he'd like to get us out of foreign entanglements. I think he'd like to stop spending money, giving money to other countries and funding everything. I think he wants to balance the budget. I think tariffs are one way that he's going to try to do that. I think he wants to eliminate income tax. I think he wants to do all the things that we want to do, okay? But he has to navigate through the swamp. And when it looks like he's doing something that you say, well, I'm not for that, just give it 2 weeks. That's my feeling. You can disagree, okay?
Until we run out of 2 weeks.
Till we run out of 2 weeks, maybe, okay?
Can I propose that there's two ways it can go? It can either go like the French Revolution or the American Revolution. It could be peaceful or it can be unpeaceful. And the unpeaceful, the France did turned into getting Napoleon as their tyrant. So
Well, if we had a constitutional convention and everybody started fighting over that, which way would that lead it? You know?
towards French
No.
Revolution.
And, do you have a hand up over here?
Toss your hand up.
No? Anybody
I
else?
don't either, so that was
Question?
quick.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
I'm Kenny Golden.
Hi, Kenny.
former Chair of this
Oh,
organization.
thank you. Thanks.
You just said that you think that Donald Trump wants to get us out of NATO?
Well,
I would-
I think that he probably believes that NATO is an outdated, the reason for NATO is outdated.
I do not.
Okay.
I think one of the most foolish things we could do is entertain getting out of NATO. What he has done, essentially, with his stance finally on Ukraine and with getting some of the NATO countries to update their amounts to 4% instead of the 2% and 3%. What he's done is actually strengthened NATO.
Is that true?
And I think if you talk to him personally, he would say, no, I want to stay in NATO.
Yeah, I
Getting
mean,
out of
but he
NATO
does-
would be a very foolish thing to do.
Point taken, but he does want to get us out of foreign entanglements, like the Paris Climate Accords, like all the things that the World Health Organization, like all the things that
United
entangle-
Nations.
the United Nations.
Yeah.
So I do believe that he wants to get us out of foreign entanglements. And as far as NATO, getting them to pay for it instead of us paying for it is a way of eliminating our entanglement.
The United Nations and NATO are two different things, as is the EU, three different things.
They are highly linked together, though.
Yep.
They are highly linked together. Okay, what else we got?
Any other questions?
Thank you, then. Yes,
I got one.
yes.
I thought they had term limits. It's called elections.
That's right.
How they working out?
Well, then Donald
How
Trump
they
can run
working
again, right?
How they working out?
That's gone.
Well, and the reason why elections aren't working
That's what we
isn't
need.
because we get to elect the same
Everybody's
person. It's because the voters are deciding that they want that person.
And plus
Okay.
it's changing.
So if you say that that person can't run, then they'll just want another person that's probably even more radical than that
Yeah.
one. You
And
know?
the
third party.
bureaucrats will take over.
Mike, again?
Already.
All right, just an update on my question, I looked up the answer.
Oh, what's your answer to the Equal Rights
Equal
Amendment?
Rights Amendment was proposed in 1923. Yes. And by 1972, Congress passed it, both houses. Then they sent it to the states, where they had to have 3/4 or whatever.
Right?
They had to have 38 states They put a sundown limit of 1982 on that, 79 through 82, whatever. They got 35 states. They were within 3 of having that go into the Constitution. So it can be done. I mean, that's very close to being done. Now, of course, there's still people trying to, in Virginia, whatever, trying to bring it back. But right now it's dead.
What's hard to get
So,
any,
It was within 3 states being ratified.
it's hard to get a major majority to agree on anything today. Because if Donald Trump says it, then 50% of the country automatically is against it. Okay? So, but I mean, I like to say, I had a class in college, they made me take a history class. I like history now, I didn't like it then. So I chose a class called Violence in America, okay? And it was interesting, it was about all the race riots and the union riots and everything. But the takeaway at the end was that people tend to expect from year to year that their plot in life will get better, okay? And they come to expect that. Well, if you take away their improvement, they won't resort to violence. But if you take away what they already have, then they'll resort to violence. So up until recently, the Democrat or the liberals, whatever you want to say, have gotten accustomed to the fact that if they just sit and wait and see, slowly, everything will go in their direction. Gay marriage, everything just continues to go in there, and they just sat back and they were happy. Donald Trump came in, he didn't stop it, because that's what usually happens when a Republican president comes in. He stops their progress for 4 years. Donald Trump came in, he didn't stop the progress. He said, I'm taking back lost territory. And when the Democrats started to have their gains that they started to depend on taken away, they were okay. But when they took away what they already had, like the Dobbs decision, now they started rioting and burning down the country. Okay? So in essence, I would say Donald Trump's responsible for the Democrats burning down the country, because he actually took away what they had. But you know, we had to do it. We had to start taking back the country. Had to start somewhere.
But he's just one man.
He's just one man.
He's the executive, and until it gets incorporated into the Congress and then voted on, it's going to go away.
All right, thank you. Do you have a question?
I just want to ask you if you could send me the slide presentation because it's hard to see it on the recording.
Okay, good. We'll do that. All right, so thank you again, David Servin. What a great speaker and a real intriguing topic.